Today I'm working on one of my favorite weekend-sized projects. This is a floral painted bouquet, and you can see it has lots of embroidery, lots of beading. It's a great project to do from start to finish in a weekend. Great for gift giving, perfect to work on with kids. I'm going to show you all the supplies that you'll need to make one of these hoops and give you the embroidery resources that you'll need to bead and embroider your hoop. So let's get started. So what will you need to create one of these floral hoops? First, you're going to need a fabric. I am using the new fabrics from Stephanie Organis from the Wandering collection from Andover Fabrics. They're not out quite yet, but they'll be out soon, and they're just beautiful as my background. But any sort of quilting cotton should work for this project. You'll need an embroidery hoop. I'm using a 4-inch embroidery hoop. Something to write with on your fabric. So I'm using a Clover water-soluble pencil. The pencil marks that you make will be kind of erased by the paint, so you don't really need to worry about them showing through with a pencil like this. Need some paintbrushes, a paint palette or something to put your paints on, and you'll need some acrylic paint. So I have a few different kinds here that I like, and water and something for your brushes. So to begin, you're going to place your fabric in the hoop. I keep my fabric in the hoop while I paint, and I keep it in the hoop when my project is completely finished. So where I'm placing the hoop right now is where it will be from start to finish on my project. So decide, if you have a printed fabric, decide where you want the print to fall in your hoop. I'm going to keep mine with the design this way, and I'm tightening it, and then I go through once I've tightened it, and I'm just going to pull the fabric even tighter, and then I'm going to cut it out of this larger piece. Cut, leaving approximately maybe 2 inches all the way around. Just enough so that you can tighten it as you're working with the embroidery. So then you're just going to freehand a vase of some sort of vessel for your flowers. You can see with this one I did sort of a rounded shape. With my other one it was more like a mason jar size. So you're just going to draw directly on your fabric and you're going to create your vessel. Okay, so you can see I have my shape here. And you can see I went back and added a little bit because my initial design was a little too narrow, and as I looked at it, I decided I wanted to add a little more. Little fixes like that can be made. They can also be made as you're painting. So as you're working with this, you can be making any changes to the design of your vase. So I'm going to make another blue vase, and I'm just going to mix a little of my blues, or pour a little of my blues out onto my palette. You don't need a ton of paint for this. 1, maybe 2 coats, depending on the sort of paint you're using, should be fine. Okay. And then you're going to grab a brush. Use a brush that feels comfortable to you. I have several that I really like. I've got some flat, I've got some round. So I'm just going to pick a brush and get started. So you've just got to dive in and start mixing your colors and see what you like and get it on the fabric. And from there, this is just your first coat. You can change things up a little until you find something that you're happy with. You can come back once it's dry and add a little bit more. I always start with my outline just to get the basic shape on the fabric. And I'm going right over my marks for the water-soluble pencil. I'm just painting right over those. So that's why I said you don't need to worry about erasing them, because you're just going to cover them up and you will never know that they were there. So I'm going to fill in this with my paint, and you can see the paint is covering it up. You barely see you don't see any of the pattern behind it. So I'm going to do one coat of this, let it dry for a few minutes, and then see if I want to add any more shading or highlights to the vase. Okay, so here is my jar. This is about 2 coats of paint. And remember, as you're looking at your shape, because you freehanded it on here, if there's any areas you don't like, you can cover them up with a flower or a leaf. So just be mostly happy with the shape of it, but don't be too particular about it either, because you are going to fill it with flowers and have things overlapping and everything. So now we're going to do the same thing with the flowers that we did with the vase. You can either use your pencil. Again, I would be using my Clover water pencil. But what I really like to do is I just start free-handing the flowers on there. And I'm just doing shapes. I know that I'm going to embroider over these. So I just want my basic shapes on the fabric. And I love flowers and I love gardeny things and arrangements, but my arrangements are never ever true to life, true to what the real flowers are. I'm just picking colors that I enjoy working with and kind of whatever I feel like doing at the moment. So I'm just going to keep putting shapes, my flower shapes on here, and I'm going to work up a bouquet. I'm going to have leaves draping, and I'm going to remember that anything I'm putting on here will be embroidered over as the final part of this process. So here is my basic design. I might add a little bit to it. I'm not really sure. I think I like it, but one thing that I will do is I always take a picture of what I'm working on, and then I look at the picture through my phone and step away from this and see, do I want something over here? Do I want to add another color? So I suggest doing that before you're completely finished. You'll also notice that the paint does dry fairly quickly on here. But before you start embroidering, you'll want to make sure that it's completely dry. Like as I'm looking at this, I still see little bits of wet paint, especially where I went a little heavier in some of the areas. So I always let it dry for a day before I stitch it. So if you're doing several of these, you can paint them all up and then work on stitching the next day. Or you could add stitches that aren't touching this part. Like I'm going to add drapey things and probably stitching over this vase, but not touching the paint. So I might do that. And you can always test it. And if no paint is coming off, then you're probably fine to start embroidering it. But that is how you create a painted fabric floral arrangement. So I'm going to link beading tutorials, embroidery tutorials that I've done in the description of this video. And then I'm going to show you also how to go from this to this, how to finish your hoop. First, I wanted to share my newest book that's coming out in the fall of 2023, Needles Out. And in that, I have a lot of projects like this, and I do other mixed media projects as well. So there's my shameless plug. And now let me show you how to finish your hoop. So you have finished stitching and beading your hoop, and you're ready to finish it up and give it to the person of your choice. So here's what it looks like when I am completely finished with my hoop. I will tie a little ribbon in the top, but you can see all the fabric from around the edges is gone. And then on the back, I have a little label. I leave this showing. I used to cover it up, and then, you know, as more time went on and I did a lot of stitching and embroidery, I came to appreciate even more the work that goes into the back of my hoop. And so I just embrace it. So I have these labels. Mine say Hoop Guts Stitched Just For You by Wild Boho. I get these from Dutch Label Shop. It's a company located, I think, in Philadelphia. And I love them. I have lots of different labels from this company. They're easy to just stitch to the back of your work, and I think it makes it a little bit more personalized. So to get to that point, here is your finished hoop. I like to give it one final stretch of fabric all the way around, just to make sure that it's really tight. As you're working with your hoop, you'll notice as you're stitching it, like your fabric loosens. That is totally normal. That's just what happens as you're stitching. So give it one final stretch, make sure everything is nice and tight, and now I'm going to trim it again. So I take my fabric scissors and I am trimming, leaving maybe a ½ inch all the way around. I know that it's at the right length, that I've left the right amount, because when I fold it over, it can fold over this hoop, the wood part of the hoop, but it's not touching this fabric. You don't want it to touch this fabric because that can leave little puckers on the other side that you don't want to see. So trim it longer at first if you need to, and then you can always go back around and trim again. So I'm just gonna trim all the way around. And then I'm gonna take my school glue. I love using this rather than, I used to use a glue gun. I don't like using a glue gun because I feel like I burn myself. It's messy. This is so easy and very convenient. What I'm gonna do is just take a strip of glue on the wood part of my hoop all the way around. And a small hoop like this, I do all at once. If I'm doing a larger hoop, I might do little sections by sections, just so my fingers don't get too gluey. Make sure you've got plenty of glue all the way around. And then you're gonna start folding the fabric over the back of the hoop. Now with the glue, it makes the fabric wet, so it stays in this position. It might need you to run your fingers over it a second time, but you can see it's already staying in the position that I want it to be in. So I just keep going all the way around the hoop. It's a very satisfying feeling to get to this point, to look at the stitches on the back. Everything's starting to look nice and neat. I'm gonna let this dry. I would say at least for an hour. If you've stitched this for you and you want to hang it up, let it dry overnight just to make sure that there's no, like, you can still feel that it's kind of wet this way. You don't want that to get on your wall, or if you're wrapping it up, you want to wait till it dries completely before you wrap it. So just let it sit overnight. But you can see this is all you need to do to finish your hoop. Now, if you want to leave your stitches uncovered, another way to do it, or if you want to cover your stitches, another way to do it is to cut a piece of felt the size of the back of your hoop. I use pinking shears to give it a nice, you know, a prettier edge than just regular fabric scissors. And you can just press it into place. The felt will stay there. It won't go anywhere. And so that's an alternate way of finishing your hoop. So I'll just give it one more press all the way around, but you can see it stays where it should stay. And then when that's dry, I'll sew my little label in, tie a ribbon to the hoop, and it is ready to be gifted or hung on a wall. So that's your tutorial. If you make a hoop like this with this video, I would love if you shared it with me over on Instagram. Just tag me in your pictures or on Facebook. I love to see what other people create. And be sure to subscribe because I'm always adding embroidery videos. Every Sunday a new one goes up. And also check out my mini encrusted beadwork class. Thanks so much.